Thank you, Nidhi. And just to echo Laura's words, thank you to Mr. Sabharwal, thank you to FICCI, thank you to IMI for hosting us here in Delhi. It has been a wonderful warm welcome that we've had here, and it's certainly an experience that I won't forget, coming to India for the first time. I hope to be able to return in the future. We were talking this morning to Tasa Mittal, who runs All About Music in India, and we'd love to be a presence here to learn more from you about India, or about music in India, and to also offer our perspective of putting India into a global context to show how important Indian music and the Indian music industry is to the global vision of music going forward. So, I mean, a very quick few words about IFPI. What do? We work on behalf of the recorded music industry worldwide. We have a global remit, and one of the ways in which we work is through a system of national groups. Our national group in India is the Indian music industry that Blaise heads up. I think Blaise is with Francis at some important meetings at the moment, but IMI is a really important, vital force in this country, representing the recorded music industry and the interests of artists. We've been going ahead a few too many slides too quickly. My responsibility at IFPI is to research and analyze music consumption, is to work out different music habits worldwide, what people are listening to, how they're listening to it, how those habits have changed over time. And that's one of the reasons why India is just such a fascinating place to be, because music is so vital here. It is so important. It is woven into everyday life. It is the heart and soul of many people's existence. And one of the areas we've been particularly fascinated in is just how things have changed in India since 2016, when Jio launched and when data rates suddenly declined. This is the data rates from Airtel in 2016, just before Jio launched, and you can see 142 rupees got you 500 megabytes of data. Jio's current offering is for pretty much the same price, 149 rupees, now gets you 42 gigabytes of data, 1.5 gigs a day. I'm sure you're all aware, data in India is the cheapest in the world, and Indians use more mobile data than anybody else worldwide. I think the average is something like 12 gigabytes a month for any user. My limit in the UK is 4 gigabytes a month. So just to give you an idea about where most people in the UK tend to be, we had an insight seminar a couple of weeks ago where I was discussing some of this. I had people put their hands up. We had about 30 people in the room. And again, most people are around sort of 4 or 5 gigabytes. That was their limit from the ISP. So to come to India, where most people get 1.5 gigs every day, is just incredible. It's a completely different mindset, and it makes you think very differently about how you access the internet, how you use the internet, and in particular how you stream content and access content like music. And what we've really seen is the changes in which this has happened and the impact that this has had. I'm not going to read these quotes out. I'll try and leave them up long enough for you to be able to see. But you can see when we asked people about how their internet access and how their music consumption had changed, they all recognized the differences that they've seen in the last few years, talking about the benefits and convenience of online access, just the ability to stream music and stream content, what they want to listen to or watch, and when they want to listen to and watch it. And people are contrasting this with what they used to do. Music was limited to perhaps the radio, to some TV channels, and if you wanted to get music online, you'd often go to a cyber cafe and you'd be downloading poor quality MP3s, probably from pirated sites at the same time. I love this particular quote. Someone summed it up really well, where they said, I used to just listen to Indian and domestic content, but then the internet happened and the world got closer. And one of the wonderful things we've seen over the last 3 years is that as well as having much easier on-demand access, people now have access to the whole world of music. So there's this wonderful opportunity not just to increase your music consumption, but to have an exposure to different cultures, different languages, different types of music, from around the world. So I've talked a little bit about the real love of music, and you can see, immediately from these sorts of slides, when we started to talk to people in detail about what they loved about music in India, this idea about how central music is to people came up immediately. So what do you like about living in India? Oh, it's the music. It's the food and it's the culture, but always when we talk to people, what's so great about India, it's the music. It weaves through the diversity of genres, the way in which it has this emotional connection with music and dance and with film. People couldn't stop talking sometimes about how much it meant to them, how it gives them food for their soul. These wonderful quotes about how vibrant and colourful music in India is, about how it's not just entertainment, but it means much more. And the way in which music is often weaved into religious festivals and cultural habits also had this extra impact and extra meaning of music. So when we asked people just to tell us what their favourite music genre was, this comes from a sample of about 2,000 people that we talked to quite recently. We asked them, what's your single favourite? What's the one genre you couldn't do without? And you can see just how important the domestic genres are and just how important Bollywood is. Just under half, 49.5% of people said that some kind of Bollywood music was their single favourite, and 82.5% of people told us that a domestic genre, some kind of Indian music, was the one that they wouldn't be able to live without. You can see how important also Indian classical music is, which is very warming to see. If we go outside, if we were to ask that in the UK, for instance, classical music and opera is probably 3-4% of people who'd say this is my favourite genre. In India, it is wonderful to see how tightly woven that is in the culture as well. And we do see age differences, as you might be unsurprised. When we look at Bollywood, for instance, newer Bollywood music is much more preferred by younger generations who've grown up with it, whereas the older Bollywood standards tend to be more often picked by older listeners. Any Bollywood at all is slightly skews towards older generations. It's also interesting to see how younger listeners are particularly interested in reaching out beyond India into some wider musical genres. So 29% of 16 to 24s told us that they liked a non-Indian genre as their favourite. Maybe that's pop music, maybe that's hip-hop. And hip-hop is spreading quite rapidly, particularly amongst younger users. Both Indian hip-hop and the more international type of genre is also very highly listened to by 16 to 24s in particular. And then Indian classical music, as you can see, as we see worldwide with classical music, tends to appeal slightly more to older listeners. But what we really saw is this real diversity of genres. And people could name many different genres that they particularly liked listening to and that they have increased listening to in the last few years when they've had much wider exposure to different types of music. We asked people for their favourite artists as well. The top three, Arijit Singh, unsurprising, who's just so ridiculously popular in the country, A.R. Rahman and Sonu Nigam were the top three singers. Outside of India, we also asked what's your favourite international artist? Justin Bieber just came out on top. Michael Jackson and Ed Sheeran, oh sorry, went a little too far there. Ed Sheeran, also popular. So you can see, there's good wide recognition of many different types of music. So broad listening habits. This is the number of hours people spend listening to music through different methods. So you have the age distribution along the bottom. So 16 to 24s spend a lot of their listening music time on YouTube. About 5 hours a week is spent listening to music just on YouTube, with then on-demand streaming services like Gaana and JioSaavn and Spotify making up about another 5 hours altogether. And you can see it does tail off over time as people get older. People listen to less music as they get older, and people listen to less music on streaming services. Perhaps they're less likely to have a phone. It's new technology. They're yet to really engage and understand it. What we found overall, and again, this is, I think, a really good demonstration of how things have changed in the last few years, is that 70% of all music listening time is now coming through streaming services. So across all our age groups, across all the 2,000 people we spoke to, 70% of music listening is coming through audio streaming services, video streaming services, things like social media, short video apps like TikTok. You know, it just shows how much that's changed. If we were to ask that question 3 years ago, before we saw this huge change in internet access, I think those figures would be very, very different. And this is a change we've seen in many countries. You know, streaming has started to dominate the music world across every region, across every country, but never in quite the speed and rapidity that we've seen in India. People have really engaged and really come to grips with streaming at a pace here that we've not seen anywhere else, even in China and countries like Korea, where internet access is very heavy and wide. Nothing has changed quite as quickly as we've seen here. We asked people why they listen to music. Things like entertainment is obviously a very important reason. One of the things we also found here that we see perhaps resonate most strongly is the way in which music is used to benefit people's mental health, if you like, to help them feel calm, to increase their happiness, to give them energy or stress relief. Music is used for a very wide range of reasons, different types of music for different methods. And we asked where people listen to music. You can see, you know, relaxing at home, driving in the car, even going to sleep, people are listening to music, exercising or at the gym, when cooking. Music really soundtracks a whole range of different activities. So looking a little bit at music streaming explicitly, we were asking a lot about what sort of streaming service you use. I'll come on to YouTube in a minute because we're talking here mostly about the audio and music streaming services. You can see that it's domestic services, Ghana and JioSaavn in particular, that are used by most people and that are the two that are the most favorite in the country. Amazon has done very well in this country by bundling their Prime Music service with Amazon Prime itself. So when you buy Amazon Prime for delivery or for the video service, you get the music service also brought into that. You've also got Wink there, Google Play, which has been around for many, many years for anyone who owns an Android smartphone. And then Spotify, who only launched earlier this year, has already managed to carve out, you know, a fair chunk of some of that market. What we also found is people use more than one streaming service. And again, this is something that is quite different about India. We see the same thing in China, but outside of those two countries, it's quite rare to see people employing more than one streaming service. You know, you can see that for our youngest age groups, it's sort of 3.5 on average streaming services that people are actually relying on a fairly regular basis. And this was a decision that people could talk quite rationally about. If you just look at that top line, they use the JioSaavn. They have Jio as their mobile network provider, so they get the JioSaavn music app and they use that as their caller tune. They have an Amazon Prime membership, so therefore they use Amazon Music as well to keep up with things. And then they pay for Google Play because they feel that Google Play Music gives them access to the most up-to-date music. And you can see the next quote, someone's using Spotify because they like the user interface, but then they also watch videos on YouTube, and they use Wink because it has really good access to regional music. So people are employing a wide range of services for a wide range of reasons. As I mentioned with Amazon, bundling is absolutely key to this and is one of the main reasons in which people get access to the premium tier of these services. You pay for a Jio connection, you're going to get access to the JioSaavn service. If you pay for Airtel, you tend to get access to Wink. If you pay for Amazon, you get access to Amazon Music. So it's wonderful that people are accessing music in these ways. I think there is something to give us pause here, which is that people aren't necessarily paying for the music. They're not necessarily recognizing the value of the music that they're paying for. They're getting it almost as a sideline in connection with their network provision or their Amazon service. So I think we have a bit to do as the industry to convince people of the singular value of music and the wealth of value that music does provide over and above simple ease and convenience of these streaming services. YouTube is obviously universal in India. We spoke to 2,169 people. I think we found 10 people who said they don't use YouTube for music. It is simple, universal use, and most people are using it on a very regular basis. I think we've got 72% of people there saying that they use YouTube on a daily basis to consume music, whether that's a single video, whether that's a dance cover. You can see the breakdown here of what people told us they were watching. So 35% of the time they're watching Bollywood music videos. That maybe just cut off at the edge for you. Dance videos, song lyric videos, song covers that have been uploaded by users, important. Indian music videos and international music videos, all important and all accessed through YouTube. And the importance of YouTube, apologies if that font is a little too small, is obviously really vital, and I won't read out those quotes, but when we talk to people about YouTube, it's very obvious how important it is in their daily lives, not just for music, for accessing tutorials, for accessing news, for accessing any kind of entertainment content. YouTube is often the first place people in India will go. Having said all that, when we did ask people why they liked YouTube, one of the main reasons they told us is because they can pirate through using YouTube. They can use the service to save MP3s. And I think this, again, comes back to what we've talked about in terms of the importance of music and the value of music. You know, because people value music so much, they want to get it through any means they can, and so piracy is often a route to that. With YouTube, saving content as MP3s through sites like Y2Mate or Save From or YTMP3 is very easy, unfortunately. Stream ripping or YouTube downloading, for those who don't know, it's a very simple and very quick process. You find your YouTube video that you're interested in, you copy that URL, you go to a site like Google, or you simply ask Google how to do it, or you simply just go to a site you've used before like YTMP3, you give that the URL, and then you can download that content as an MP3 to listen to, or download it as a video, indeed, within a few seconds. Very easy to do. For most people, I think Lowry mentioned, unwitting piracy. I think a lot of people don't understand that this is actually unlicensed access. This is actually piracy. Certainly when I talk to people in the UK about this, talk to people in America and in countries in Europe, people don't understand that this is a form of piracy. You are accessing music through an unlicensed means. You are taking music in a way you shouldn't. You are taking revenue away from the creators. There's also BitTorrent out there as a piracy means. If you go to a site like the Pirate Bay, which probably most people have heard of as the most famous piracy site, you can find songs there from Arijit Singh, from other Bollywood singers. There's also MP3 download sites. There's Honey Singh. There's other MP3 download sites where you can access almost any piece of Indian music. So it's very easy to get hold of. And so as was mentioned in the introduction, piracy use in India is one of the highest in the world. 67% of people are accessing music through some kind of piracy on a monthly basis. You can see how that compares to some of the other countries worldwide. And what we see is that stream ripping, this downloading from YouTube, is the major music piracy threat in India. But we still see very high use of things like BitTorrent, cyberlockers like RapidGator and Uploaded that store music as well. As you can see, in most countries, piracy does tend to be higher for younger age groups. It's the same thing we see worldwide. It's those people who are most engaged with music who are prepared to use piracy to get hold of content, whether they know it's piracy or not. But there are ways in which we can get around this. one of the most effective ways in which we have found to address piracy and to tackle piracy is through site blocking. Larry mentioned it earlier, ability to ask ISPs or to force ISPs to block access to sites is incredibly successful in reducing visits to those particular sites. It may seem a bit odd that I'm using Argentina as a first example, but I have lots of examples that I'm going to run through very quickly. You can see in 2014, the Pirate Bay, that's the BitTorrent site we were just talking about, was blocked in Argentina. And you can see just how quickly visits to that site dropped. Over the course of a year, it was down by 99%. People just stopped using the Pirate Bay as a piracy destination. That's great, but there's plenty of other BitTorrent sites out there. So what we really need, in addition to simply blocking one or two sites, is the ability to easily and successfully and effectively block a range of sites. And when we do that, we see a really big impact. This is all BitTorrent activity in the UK following a series of site blocking initiatives that the BPI, our version of the IMI, pioneered in the UK. You can see that the first site was blocked was the Pirate Bay. It's right over on the left-hand side, TPB. And when we blocked the Pirate Bay, we didn't see a huge impact on all BitTorrent activity. Visits to the Pirate Bay decreased, just like we saw in Argentina, but people had other alternatives. We then blocked a few others. Kick-Ass Torrents is CAT there, and a couple of other sites were blocked, and we started to see a decline in overall BitTorrent activity. And then we blocked another 9 sites. And at that point, you're starting to reach a critical mass of blocked sites where you're seeing the major sites, the really good BitTorrent piracy sites, start to become inaccessible. It becomes more difficult for people to find content, and it becomes more difficult for them to find it on a user-friendly site. You can see we had that 4th wave of sites being blocked as well, and over time you see this really impressive reduction in BitTorrent activity in the UK. It's also important that this is twinned with the ability to give people access to content through licensed methods. In India, you've got that sorted. You have so many different audio streaming services that offer licensed content. You have YouTube offering licensed content. So when we look at the demand and supply, if you like, for piracy, the demand is tackled in India. You've got the ability to give people music as they might want it. And what we really need to do is tackle the supply of the pirated content, tackle the easy ability of people to access piracy. Now, I've just put up some references to academic research looking at the effect of these blocks in the UK, and they show that it's not just access to piracy that declines when you start to block sites, the access to licensed content starts to increase. So this is something that can really benefit revenues across the industry, and won't just benefit the music industry, it will benefit the film industry, it will benefit the sports industry. All of these people who have content that is pirated online, they will all benefit from site blocking abilities. I'm going to go through these really quickly. In Netherlands, we blocked the Pirate Bay. You can see the impact. In Finland, we blocked the Pirate Bay. You can see the impact and on BitTorrent traffic overall. In Austria, in Belgium, in Spain, in Australia, in South Korea, there's a whole range of sites have been blocked. You can see in every single example, and we could do this anywhere a site has been blocked, it is successful, it is effective, it drives people away from those sites, and it helps push them towards licensed content. So, core issues tackling all of this, and then I'm going to stop, and I think we're going to move on to a panel. Piracy is this issue of demand and supply. Demand is wonderful here. You have the ability to meet that demand, to give people access to this huge range of diverse music in India. You're using both the license services which have launched, the ability of the recorded music industry to push music out in as many ways as possible. But there remains this issue of supply. Piracy destinations, as we've seen, are mostly located outside India, which means often domestic enforcement using law enforcement is very difficult, because there's no one to arrest here, there are no servers to seize, there's nothing that you can do to actually stop people operating in India. But you can block access to those sites. Site blocking is effective. There are issues here, the legal process is lengthy and the legal process can be very expensive. We've seen great actions by people like the Maharashtra Cybercrime Digital Unit who've been able to do this, but often their efforts are limited to a particular region. And we know how big India is. Taking site blocking actions in every single region is a hugely difficult process. So we have an issue, we have these abilities to do it. I think it would be great to have easier procedures and easier methods to do it. And I think we need to work with the major platforms as well, people like YouTube, to be able to address the core problems here. I think we can do a lot in collaboration with the biggest tech platforms to help curb issues with piracy. We can stop access on social networks like Facebook and WhatsApp, perhaps, and persuade them to block access to these sites in addition to just blocking access through normal website methods. So I'm going to stop there. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to be on the panel that we are going to move to next. I think we're just going to have a bit of a change in setup. So we have a few minutes for a comfort break, and thank you very much for listening.